As movies moved into the mass medium stage, Hollywood entered its golden age. We'll explore that era, as well as the transformation of the Hollywood studio system. Once the Hollywood studio system was established as a profitable business model, studios had the luxury of developing a distinctive movie-making style that ultimately marked Hollywood's golden age. This style began to take shape in 1915, characterized by new narrative techniques like varied camera distances, close-up camera shots, multiple storylines, fast-paced editing, and symbolic imagery. The first feature-length film combined many of these elements. D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation was considered a technical masterpiece and an enormous hit. Based on the 1904 novel and play The Klansman by Thomas Dixon Jr., this epic film is described by History.com as depicting, quote, the Ku Klux Klan as valiant saviors of a post-war South ravaged by Northern carpetbaggers and immoral freed black people. The NAACP tried to protest The Birth of a Nation, but the film's popularity was too strong. It was so strong, in fact, it helped grow KKK membership across the country. Other popular films of the time included historical and religious epics, along with the new genres, social dramas, mysteries, comedies, horror films, science fiction movies, war films, crime dramas, and westerns. Up until now, when we talk about films, we mean silent films, but they weren't always silent. Early films were accompanied by live music, as there was often no soundtrack included on the film print. Sound on film, as we know it, was created by Lee DeForest, who you may remember as inventor of the Audion vacuum tube from the history of radio. DeForest phonofilms were shown in some cinemas in the mid-1920s. In 1927, Warner Brothers released the first talkie, Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer. The feature-length film was largely silent, interspersed with recorded musical numbers and brief dialogue. And just in case you thought the movie pictured on this slide was less racist than the one before it, well, this one doesn't prominently feature the KKK, but Jolson does perform jazzed-up minstrel songs in blackface. Around the same time, Fox premiered sound film newsreels, weekly 10-minute compilations of news events from around the world that played before a movie. Newsreels would continue into the 1960s. The availabilities of movie with sound pushed annual movie attendance in the United States from 60 million a week in 1927 to 90 million a week just 2 years later. By 1931, nearly 85% of America's 20,000 theaters accommodated talkies, and by 1935, the rest of the world had adopted talkies as the commercial standard. By the time talkies had transformed the film industry, Hollywood had established firm control over narrative style, the recognizable way in which directors told stories through the movies they made. The model serves up 3 ingredients that give Hollywood movies their distinctive flavor: the narrative, or story, the genre, type of story, and the director, as the story's author. Hollywood narratives present recognizable character types, like the protagonist, romantic interest, and sidekick. In the 2020 film Tenet, the main character played by John David Washington is even named protagonist. Plots are typically propelled by the main character's decisions and actions to resolve a conflict by the end of the movie. Unlike a television show, where stories can unfold over several years, moviegoers want some kind of resolution before the closing credits. Modern filmmakers also use computer-generated imagery and other special effects to provide a powerful audience experience. Hollywood established the movie genre, categories in which conventions regarding characters, scenes, and themes recur in combination. Genre gives an audience a vague sense of what the movie is going to be about, as a romantic comedy will offer a much different experience than science fiction. Grouping films by category allowed the movie industry to achieve both product standardization and product differentiation, offering a diverse set of movie-watching experiences for viewers. A final lasting characteristic of Hollywood's golden age is the establishment of the director as the main author of the film. Successful directors like Spike Lee, Hayao Miyazaki, and Quentin Tarantino develop a particular cinematic style or an interest in specific topics that differentiates their narratives from those of other directors. Despite the intentional racial and ethnic diversity of my previous example, most well-known film directors are white men. As of 2020, just 5 women have received an Oscar nomination for Best Director, with only Kathryn Bigelow taking home the statue for her 2008 film Hurt Locker. Despite Hollywood's dominance of the film industry, viewers have long had alternatives to the feature-length, hugely attended, big-budget movies offered by the studio system. These alternatives include global cinema, documentaries, and independent films. While films made in other countries comprise about 2% of the movies seen in the U.S., America is not the #1 film producer. Those distinctions go to India and Nigeria, nicknamed Bollywood and Nollywood, respectively. Each produced more than 2,000 movies a year, compared to around 700 from the U.S. It's common for Bollywood movies to be screened at theaters across the triangle, thanks to the region's growing South Asian population. Another Hollywood alternative is the documentary, a film that interprets reality by recording real people and settings. As educational, often non-commercial presentations, they usually require the backing of industry, government, or philanthropy to cover production costs. Because documentaries aren't designed to be blockbusters, they can also cover controversial subject matters, such as The Hunting Ground, about campus sexual assault. Finally, independent films are produced on a shoestring budget and shown to smaller audiences, often at independent film festivals like Sundance, South by Southwest, Telluride, and Cannes. Big studios look at these festivals as a way to discover new talent, which sometimes leads them to purchase independent film companies or set up deals to help with distribution for a cut of the profits. Indie films are also finding audiences through online services like Netflix, which promote, feature, and produce work from outside the studio system. Beginning in the late 1940s, forces began to reshape how people viewed movies and what they expected from a film. The U.S. Department of Justice sued 8 major motion picture companies, the Big Five, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, MGM, Warner Brothers, and RKO Pictures, along with the Little Three, Universal Pictures, Columbia Pictures, and United Artists, for illegal trade practices. The government wanted studios to end block booking and divest themselves of one of the 3 pillars of production, distribution, and exhibition. The case ultimately reached the Supreme Court, ruling the studios were guilty of violating antitrust laws. All films were now required to be sold on an individual basis, which stopped block booking. The studios were also no longer allowed to control all 3 pillars. The studios chose to jettison the exhibition pillar and sold off their theaters. Vertical integration was over, which opened opportunities for new forms of film exhibition, like art house screenings of documentaries and foreign films and thousands of new drive-in movie theaters. Something else had a major impact on the movie industry, and that was the mass migration out of cities post-World War II. The GI Bill guaranteed home loans for white veterans, so families bought houses in the suburbs, far from downtown movie theaters. They also started using their disposable income on consumer goods rather than entertainment. This coincided with the marriage age dropping from 24 to 19, which meant significantly fewer young couples going on movie dates. It should come as no surprise that the rise of television also had a significant impact on Hollywood. As families gathered around TV sets to watch wholesome content, Movies began offering more serious themes not addressed on the small screen, such as alcoholism, racism, sexuality, and adult-teen relationships. One such movie was 1949's Pinky, in which a light-skinned black woman passes for white. Although black stars like Lena Horne and Dorothy Dandridge were interested in the title role, it ultimately went to white actress Jeannie Crane. Ironically, Pinky and other films challenged the authority of the industry's own motion picture production code, adopted in the early 1930s to restrict film depictions of violence, crime, drug use, and sexual behavior. In 1967, the Motion Picture Association of America initiated the current rating system, which rates films for age appropriateness rather than censoring all adult content. The movie industry also began to make technological advancements to lure folks away from TV. The industry adopted Technicolor, a series of color film processes that was far more alluring than the black and white images on a TV screen. Movie theaters kept one-upping TV with widescreens, stereophonic sound, and sharper image quality. While these all helped, they couldn't fix the studio's core problem: the middle-class white flight to the suburbs. If you thought TV was a threat to the movie business, cable television and video cassette were worse. The 1970s launch of cable subscription service HBO, or home box office, and similar channels offered unedited theatrical movies licensed from major Hollywood film studios, all without commercial interruption. Why go out and watch a new movie when you could wait a while and watch it at home? But this was also Hollywood's chance to meet middle-class audiences where they were, the suburbs. The film industry developed a new market for renting and selling movies on VHS and later DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming services. Studios and indies alike are looking toward internet distribution for the future of the video business. Movie fans can rent or purchase films from services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. As people invest in widescreen TVs and sophisticated sound systems, home entertainment is getting bigger and keeping pace with the movie theater experience.